Last October, my roommate Caleb talked me into driving 2 hours west of our campus to hit a seasonal attraction called Night Stalker Farms, basically a giant corn maze by day and a haunted trail after dark. I figured it would be the usual jump scare actors in rubber masks, but Caleb swore the place let you wander the maze on your own before the scare actors clocked in, which sounded like a cool way to dodge the crowds. We left right after my Friday midterm, grabbed gas station coffee, and reached the farm a little before 5. The sky was that perfect burnt orange you get right before a cold front rolls through, and the stalks were taller than a box truck, tips rustling like paper bags. The parking lot was maybe half full, minivans, a couple of pickup trucks, one RV. A kid in a reflective vest took our $20 each and gave us a laminated map the size of a placemat. "Sun sets in 90 minutes, he said, pointing to a hand-painted sign that read, "Absolutely out by dusk." Caleb elbowed me. Rules were made to be bent. We pocketed the map and entered the maze through a plywood castle gate strung with plastic bats. For the first half hour, we treated it like Instagram fodder. Shafts of sunshine, scarecrows every 100 yards, those corny trivia signs where you pick left or right depending on the answer. Every fork in the path looked the same. Packed dirt, dried husks underfoot. The tops of the corn blotting out everything but a slice of sky. We saw maybe 3 other pairs of people and could hear some little kids laughing somewhere deeper in the maze. The wind kept shifting, making the rows hiss like they were whispering about us. We were angling toward checkpoint 4 on the map when Caleb stopped walking. He said, "Did you hear a whistle?" I hadn't, but a second later there it was. 2 short blasts, like someone using a metal referee whistle. Then silence. I figured it was staff signaling break time, but Caleb, who ran cross-country in high school, said that was how coaches called runners back to the start. Weird, but whatever. We pressed on. Sunset slid fast after that, shadows climbing the stalks. The signs grew farther apart until we realized we hadn't seen a trivia board in 10 minutes. The map was basically a spiderweb of rectangles, impossible to match to what we were walking. Caleb finally admitted, "We might be lost just as another whistle cut the air. One long note. Closer now." I shouted, "Hey, which way out?" No answer, only wind. Caleb thought it was funny, but I felt my stomach knot. We kept moving, trying every right-hand turn. The sky went purple. Somewhere behind us, a generator kicked on and floodlights lit the distant edge of the maze, probably where the haunted trail entrance was. Relief washed over me. We only had to aim for the glow. We hustled that direction, but the paths wound in maddening loops. Every time the light looked brighter, we'd hit a dead end or a fork that turned us back into darkness. Then we met the scarecrow. At first I thought it was just another prop. Burlap sack for a head, floppy straw hat, plaid shirt stapled to a stake. But as we got closer, I noticed the stake wasn't planted. It was being held. The figure shifted its weight, hat tilting. Caleb whispered, "Dude, nice costume," and raised his phone for a picture. The flash fired and I saw a human face under the burlap, eyes shining wet, mouth smeared dark like it had been chewing dirt. The thing, the person, lifted a whistle on a lanyard, put it to cracked lips, and blew once, long and shrill. We backed up fast, turned, sprinted down the corridor. Stalk slapped my arms and shed kernels into my hoodie. Behind us, the whistle blew again, shorter, answered by another somewhere off to our left. Whoever these people were, they weren't in rubber masks waiting for a queue of tourists. They were signaling positions like hunters driving deer. "Ditch the main paths," Caleb gasped. We cut through a weak spot in the rows, leaves slashing our faces, dirt sucking at our sneakers. 10 yards in, a narrower service trail appeared, the kind tractors make during planting. We followed it until faint music drifted ahead, the farm's entrance loop blasting Monster Mash. We burst from the corn onto a strip of open ground behind a line of porta potties. No one else around. The main lot lights glared 50 yards off. We'd made it. Caleb turned to look back. The first scarecrow stepped from the corn edge, whistle dangling, head cocked like an owl. Two more shapes flanked him, both wearing the same ragged burlap hoods. None spoke, they just watched. We fast walked to the car, trying not to run like total wimps. A staffer near the ticket booth called, "Maze closes at dark, guys." I shouted that 3 creeps were inside messing with whistles. His smile faded. He said all actors clocked in at 7 and used radios, not whistles. We filed a police report the next morning. Nothing ever made the news. Night Stalker Farms opened again this year with a no-actor policy and metal detectors at the gate. I work at a grain processing facility about 15 minutes outside of town. I've been doing this for about 8 years now, and my work partner is this guy named John, who's probably in his 50s. We basically run the overnight shift together during harvest season, which in our area is September through late October. The job itself is pretty straightforward. We monitor the equipment, keep things running smoothly, make sure the grain gets processed and stored properly. It's mostly routine, but the overnight shifts can get long, especially when you're dealing with the same person all night, in basically an industrial warehouse. This past October was particularly busy. We'd had a really good growing season, so the volume of grain coming through was massive. John and I were working almost every night that month, sometimes pulling double shifts when someone called out. It was sometime in the middle of October. I can't remember the exact date, but it was definitely midweek. John had mentioned something about his grandson's birthday party coming up that weekend and how he was looking forward to it. We were about halfway through our shift, around 2 in the morning, when the equipment started making this weird noise. It wasn't normal. We'd both been doing this long enough to know when something wasn't right with the machinery. I told John I was going to go check the hopper. He said he'd stay in the control room and monitor things from there. I grabbed a flashlight and headed out to the back of the facility where the grain hopper is. The area outside is basically just the loading dock, and then the fields beyond it. At night, with no moon, it's pitch black out there. When I got out there, I shined my flashlight up at the hopper, and that's when the sound came through. A voice coming from the cornfield. It was a man's voice, but I couldn't make out what he was saying. It sounded panicked or urgent. I called back out, asking who was there and what they needed. The voice didn't respond to me, but it kept talking, like he was talking to someone else, not to me. I turned my flashlight toward the cornfield and shined it out into the rows, but I couldn't see anything. Just dried corn stalks going back into darkness. I went back inside to get John. I told him someone was out in the field. He seemed skeptical, but he came back out with me anyway. We stood on the loading dock listening, and after a few seconds we heard it again. That same voice, still sounding distressed. John said maybe someone broke down on the road and was lost. He suggested we go check it out. I didn't want to leave the equipment running unattended, but he said it would only take 5 minutes. So we grabbed our flashlights and walked toward where the voice was coming from. We got to the edge of the cornfield and started walking in between the rows. The corn stalks were tall and dry, and they made noise as we pushed through them. We were calling out, asking if anyone needed help, and we heard the voice again, except this time it sounded like it was coming from a different direction. John said this was weird and we should head back. I agreed. Neither of us had a good feeling about it suddenly. We turned around to go back to the facility, and that's when we saw it. Out of nowhere, there was movement, like something shifting in the corn about 30 feet from us. John yelled, "Who the hell are you?" And the silhouette just turned and started walking deeper into the field, just walking calmly away like it knew exactly where it was going. We didn't follow it. We ran straight back to the facility. I locked all the doors and called 911 to report it. I told them someone was trespassing on the property and acting strange. The cops showed up about 20 minutes later. They did a walkthrough of the facility, and then sent an officer out to the cornfield with a flashlight. He came back after about 10 minutes and said there was no one out there. He suggested it might have been someone from the nearby town, just cutting through the property, and we probably just spooked each other. But about 3 days later, we found some stuff scattered in the cornfield. Torn fabric, a watch, Some personal items just scattered around like someone had been dragged through there. We reported it again, and this time the police seemed to take it more seriously. They brought dogs and did a more thorough search, but they never found anything else or anyone. John and I didn't talk about it much after that. We just finished out the season. This was October 2011, and I was 19, working harvest season in Indiana. My uncle owned a small farm and needed extra hands for the harvest, so I drove down from Chicago to help out for a few weeks. The money wasn't great, but I needed it for college, and he was letting me stay at his place for free, so it worked out. My uncle had about 300 acres of corn, and we were working long days, trying to get everything harvested before the weather turned. He had this old John Deere combine that broke down constantly, and a grain truck that was probably older than me, but we made it work. He also kept a shotgun in the combine, said it was for coyotes, but I think he just liked having it around. The routine was pretty simple. I'd drive the grain truck alongside the combine while my uncle operated it, and when the hopper was full, he'd unload into my truck. Then I'd drive it to the grain elevator in town while he kept harvesting. It was boring, repetitive work, but I didn't mind. It gave me time to think and listen to music on my phone. This happened during my second week there. It was a Thursday night, and we were trying to finish up this one section before calling it quits. The sun was already going down, and my uncle wanted to get just a few more rows done before dark. I was waiting in the truck at the edge of the field for him to come back around and unload. I remember I was scrolling through my phone when I noticed headlights pulling up behind me on the access road. I figured it was one of the neighbors coming to check on their own fields, or maybe another farmer heading home. There were always trucks going up and down these back roads during harvest, but the truck just sat there with its high beams pointed right at me. I couldn't see anything because of the glare in my mirrors. After a few minutes, it started to weird me out, so I got out to see what they wanted. As soon as I stepped out of the truck, the headlights shut off, and I heard the engine turn off too. My eyes were still adjusting from the bright lights, and I couldn't see much in the darkness. I called out asking if they needed something, but got no response. I walked a little closer and could make out the shape of a pickup truck, but nobody was in the driver's seat. The door was hanging open, and the dome light was off, which seemed strange. I was about to walk back to my truck when I heard footsteps in the corn, right next to where I was standing. Not like an animal, but definitely human footsteps moving slowly through the dry stalks. Whoever it wasn't trying to be quiet. They were just walking parallel to where I was standing on the road. I backed up toward my truck, keeping my eyes on the corn, and asked who was there. The footsteps stopped for a second, then started up again faster, this time moving toward the front of my truck. I ran back and jumped in, locking the doors behind me. I tried calling my uncle, but he didn't pick up. Probably couldn't hear his phone over the combine. I started the engine thinking I'd drive down to where he was harvesting. But when I put it in gear, the truck lurched and made this awful grinding sound, then stopped completely. I tried again, but the truck wouldn't move at all. That's when I saw him in my side mirror. A man standing right next to my door, just standing there staring at me through the window. His face was pale, and his clothes were filthy like he'd been living in the fields. I laid on the horn as loud as I could, hoping my uncle would hear it. The man stood up and started walking back toward my door, but this time he was holding something that looked like a piece of rebar or a metal pipe. He raised it up and smashed it into my passenger window. The glass cracked but didn't break completely. I kept honking frantically while he hit it again and again. On the third hit, the window shattered and he started reaching through, trying to unlock the door from the inside. I grabbed his arm, trying to keep him from reaching the lock, and he made this sound that I'll never forget. Not quite a scream, more like an animal shriek. His skin felt wrong, too cold and almost slimy. I could hear my uncle's combine getting closer, but it still sounded far away. The man yanked his arm back, cutting it on the broken glass, but he didn't even react to it. He went back to my driver's side and raised the pipe to break that window too. That's when I heard the combine engine shut off suddenly. Then a shotgun blast. The man spun around and took off running into the corn. My uncle came running up with his shotgun asking if I was hurt. He'd heard the horn from across the field and came as fast as he could. We looked at the front of the truck and saw the chain wrapped around the axle attached to a fence post. My uncle cut it with bolt cutters from his toolbox. His hands were shaking while he did it. We called the sheriff and they came out with a couple deputies, but they couldn't find any trace of the guy, just some blood on the broken glass and footprints leading into the field. They took a report, but nothing ever came of it. We finished the harvest that year, but we changed how we did things, always worked in pairs, never past dark, and my uncle kept that shotgun loaded and within reach at all times. I still help out sometimes when he really needs it, but we don't talk about what happened, and we definitely don't work that particular section anymore.